Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Saida Pagan. For more than a decade, the Ebony Repertory Theatre has been showcasing the very best in African American stage performance. Ebony Repertory is the resident company and operator of the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center located along Washington Boulevard. Well, today we are very honored to have two extremely influential individuals in the history of our city, former state senator and city council member Nate Holden, founder of the Performing Arts Center, and Wren T. Brown, an award-winning performer of stage and screen, a director, producer, and co-founder of the Ebony Repertory Theatre. Thank you both for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
It is my pleasure.
Yes, now we want to talk about all the amazing and exciting performances and things that are happening at the Performing Arts Center. But before that, I'd like to let our viewers know a little bit about the history of the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. And I'm going to begin with you,
Simply
Senator.
put, it was the Ebony Theater for many years. Nick and Edna Stewart started that theater. They were the founders. And of course they ran into trouble later on because they were home free, owned it free and clear, to my understanding. They were required to retrofit the theater for earthquake safety. And they took a loan out on it, $300,000. They were not doing that kind of business, really, to be able to pay their loan. Even after having done that, another earthquake came and destroyed it even more. So there you got this building, $300,000 investment, and you also have additional earthquake damage, and it was up for sale virtually. They could not service the debt. Other people took control of the theater. Nick didn't quite understand that. It was lost. And I heard about it. I was very sad to hear that. And we could lose it. The community could lose it. There are outside people in front of the line to quiet. And in doing so, they would not maintain it as a African American theater of arts. So I put my foot down. I said, let me tell you, you own it, but you won't build an outhouse there. That's what I said. And I said, turn it over to the city. So the city acquired it. The Community Redevelopment Agency acquired it. Now we needed the money, so the CRA applied to Washington for a grant, and they did not make the application properly. So happens that a friend of mine, his name is Bill Clinton, the president. So I met him at the airport. I said, I need your help. He says, what can I do for you, Nate? I said, I need some money for that theater. Come back to Washington, which I did. So I went back and I met with him. I said, I got to have it. The president said so. They said, your application is not properly done. So I said, what application? They showed it to me. It disappeared instantaneously. and I called the CRA. I said, you guys reapply for the grant. So they came up with $12 million, and that's got us started and underway.
Was so important, I'm assuming, to keep that theater and Performing Arts Center for the community. Wren, tell us about the history of that part of Los Angeles with regards to African American performance.
Well, thank you very much for having me, firstly. That community is rich, rich, rich in history regarding the theatrical arts. I was born 150 yards from the front door of the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. It became the Ebony Showcase Theater, as Mr. Holden said, in 1966, under the leadership of Nick and Edna Stewart. They had founded the Ebony Showcase Theater in 1950 at another location here in Los Angeles, and they purchased that property in 1966. So 150 yards from the front door of that now theater, I was born. I walked past there every single day of my life to go to grammar school, to get a hamburger, to get my hair cut, to go to middle school with all of my siblings. I have 4 brothers and a sister, and my entire neighborhood. And Mr. Stewart, Mr. Nick Stewart, and my grandfather, Troy Brown, they were in Swingin' in a Dream on Broadway together in 1939. So the families had history from that perspective. But at La Brea in Washington, we're talking about the Washington Boulevard corridor, at La Brea in Washington was the Parisian Room, the great jazz Parisian Room. Jazz was there. Some of the finest artists in the history and the pantheon of the great jazz artists played right there at La Brea in Washington. If you came 1 block to the east, there was Tommy Tucker's Playroom, right at Highland Avenue in Washington. And then if you came to Harcourt in Washington, 1 block to the west of where the Nate Holden is, that was the It Club under John McClane. And then if you went 3 blocks to the east, there was the Hillcrest Club at Hillcrest in Washington. So it had been a theatrical corridor for many, many years. The Nate Holden Performing Arts Center sits on what I call theatrical terra firma. From 1924, it was called the Wren Theater. It was a single-screen, modern movie theater. And the transition to talking pictures happened in 1929. And so that theater was there for many, many years. Then it became Jazz at the Metro. And then, again, in 1966, it became the Ebony Showcase Theater. And when I was a child of about 6 years old, it was the first marquee I had ever seen. And so when it came to the founding of the Ebony Repertory Theatre, I named it in honor of the first marquee I'd ever seen.
That is amazing. Now, between the years that it began, 2003, and I believe 2007 is when your repertory theater company came in, is that correct?
We took over officially in February of 2008.
2008. Okay.
Yes.
So what was going on in between those years before your company took over?
The city cultural affairs department was pretty much managing it. Excuse me for my voice.
Sure.
And they were not doing a good job.
So who was managing it now? Who?
The city cultural affairs department.
Ah.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And so until Wren brought his theater in,
Great.
Well, let me just say,
Yes.
it was named Nate Holden by the community, not me.
Good idea, though.
Yeah, when it was finished, I wanted to name it Ebony Showcase, and talked to the family about that. They said, no, it's our name and we're going to keep it. So Jackie DuPont Walker was the chair of the PAC, the planning committee in that area. They had about 40 members. And unbeknownst to me, they went out and collected 500 signatures. It's called Project Area Committee. And they got 500 signatures. And when I heard about it, they talked to this community redevelopment agency, and they said, we're naming it Nate Holden Performing Arts Center, because it had no name. It's fine, I couldn't argue that.
It sounds
so
wonderful.
That's how it happened.
That's a great story. Now tell us why you began your theater company.
I began the Ebony Repertory Theatre born of necessity. When you talk about cultural specificity, particularly in the 500 square miles that is Los Angeles, we had never had a professional performing arts center from an African American perspective. We're talking about professional, where artists are paid a living wage. We have the East West Players, we have the Latino Theater Company, but there was never a professional African American theater company in the city's history. So we are the first and only African American equity theater in the city's history. Actors Equity was founded in 1913, and we were founded in 2007. So we're very proud of that distinction, and we felt it necessary to have our community see itself as whole, to put things on the stage that really represented the diversity and the demographics of the community. And so it was out of necessity. I have lived in the 10th District my entire life, and as I drove past, watching the cornerstone placed on the new theater, I drove past and, just kept coming to me that I hope that this is not a white elephant. And I had something residing in me that said, if I have an opportunity, to really, really, really put some culture into that building, that's what I want to do. And it ties to our mission of wanting to have diverse, high-standard professional performing arts. And so that's how it came about in my spirit. And I grabbed together a kitchen cabinet of 6 people who supported me tremendously. And the advent of the Ebony Repertory Theatre happened in June of 2007.
What was your goal when it first opened its doors? When it first opened its doors back in the early 2000s, what do you believe the mission was, or what did you believe the mission was at that time?
That the community should have their own theater, could be identified with the African culture. And Wren stated it so perfectly because that's what he's brought to the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. And the community just so excited when they go there. When I'm out in the community, people come to me and they says, I was at the theater. We enjoyed the play. We enjoyed the performance. That's what it was for. That's their way of saying thank you. No matter how hard you work, what commitment you make to provide that facility for the community, all I want is saying, I enjoyed the theater. I enjoyed the play. And they're going to go on for years. It's not going to just be like in 1913, they had the first beginning. In 2007, Wren brought it in. It'll continue for another 50 years, hopefully.
Let's talk about the importance of having theater in communities of color. So many people understand it, but others don't understand maybe why it's so important. So I want to throw out this question to both of you. Why is it important for the African American community to have its own theater, to see its stories being told on the stage?
Because often the narrative is written by the dominant culture, and the narrative is often poorly written about communities of color. And so when you can see yourself as whole, when you can walk into a theater and you can see a play where your mother or your grandmother or one of your siblings is represented, though that is not that individual on the stage, you know that, you intellectually know that, but there is a kinship immediately. There is an understanding immediately, and it's vitally important because when you're able to see yourself as whole, then you're able to exit that theater chamber and to treat someone with another kind of intentional civility. You feel better about being a human being. And so the goods and services all went away from that community as I grew up. We used to have a major supermarket in the community right along Washington Boulevard. There was a See's Candy on Washington Boulevard. There were goods and services with barbershops and a shoe shine Paul. Everything was there, and it started moving away. The crack epidemic of the 80s devastated the Washington Boulevard corridor between, really, quite frankly, Fairfax and Crenshaw, and even further east. So it's just vitally important that you're able to come in there and be a repository of culture.
Would you like to add to that?
It generates pride. That's very important. When you know that your story and the community story is being told and it's on stage. It reminded me when I was a kid, if I went to the movie and I didn't see any people of color in the movie, sometimes the butler, the chauffeur, the maid, nothing outstanding. So it said to the community and to the general public, that's what you do. You're the butler and you're the maid and you're the chauffeur and that's it. But when you start seeing Dorothy Dandridge and the people like that performing on television, then of course you saw many, many others. It gave you a lot of pride. And so therefore I wanted to make sure that that would continue within this community, that the facility would be there and find individuals like Wren and people in the industry who come there and make it even more relevant to the community.
Wonderful. Now let's talk, this is 2020,
Yes.
So let's talk about the wonderful performances that you have in store for us this year.
Well, presently we have 1 week left. We're presenting a play called Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill about one of the last performances in the life of the great Billie Holiday. She dies in July of 1959. This play takes place in March of 1959 in South Philadelphia. So right now we have a critically acclaimed production starring Carol Foreman and Stefan Terry under my direction called Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Most recently it was depicted on HBO with the Tony Award winning artist Audra McDonald playing the principal character. So following that, we're going to have the two-time Tony nominee on March 5th and March 7th of this year, 2020, Vivian Reed doing a tribute to Lena Horne. Then the wonderful, wonderful dance company, the Garth Fagan Dance Company from Rochester, New York. Garth Fagan choreographed many things, but most particularly he gave the world The Lion King. And so, I mean literally gave the world The Lion King. So that's at the end of March. And then a Philip Hayes Dean play in May called The Sty of the Blind Pig will be on stage there. And so we're very, very pleased with what the subscription offering that we have this year. And so that's some of the upcoming events.
Tell us about your wish list for the Repertory Theater.
If I could do one production among all the productions available to be done, it would be Dreamgirls. I'll never forget my high school drama teacher, Mr. Robert Jukowski at Hamilton High School. In June of 1982, when I was a senior there, he said, go home Sunday and watch the Tony Awards. And there's a production called Dreamgirls and a young woman named Jennifer Holliday. And that performance there touched my life in a most concussive way. And I eventually came to know all of the principals of the original production of Dreamgirls, and I would love to present and produce Dreamgirls on the stage at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center.
Senator Holden, what's on your wish list?
My wish list is that I wish that Mr. Wren Bryant could have his wish.
tell us what else you present at your company, at the Performing Arts Center.
Well, we have a lot of community events, town halls. We have the secretary of the Smithsonian was recently, Dr. Lonnie Bunch was with us in conversation with LL Cool J in the end of 2019. The great jazz pianist, Mr. Ahmad Jamal, the brilliant jazz singer Diane Reeves, the wonderful Billy Childs, Patrice Rushen. So we have dance, we have music, we have a lecture series, but the cornerstone of what we do is the producing of theater.
How do you determine what goes on your stage? How do you determine which performances to bring to Los Angeles?
Well, as the producing artistic director, it's kind of my taste and my choice that way. Most of the people we put on that stage are in Los Angeles. Every now and again we will bring someone from out of state, but it's primarily pulling from the pool of great artists and great thinkers in the Los Angeles community. But it's really kind of been the journey of my life, being greatly impacted by brilliant minds from a lecture series perspective. I've seen over 1,000 plays in my life. I've participated in so many plays as an actor. I've now directed several plays, and I certainly have produced many more. So it's really about my taste and my aesthetic as the producing artistic director.
Now, we had there, before Wren moved in, we had the facility would have events for prime ministers, would have for ambassadors, Jamaica, Trinidad, etc., to meet the people who are not living here, but that's their homeland. And a lot of folks from Jamaica, friends of Jamaica, lived right here in Los Angeles. So we would have an event there for them, a reception, things like that as well.
I think maybe so many people in Los Angeles may not know the wonderful things that you're doing. How do you get the word out?
Well, we get the word out through our website, through all matter of social media. That way, we still do snail mail. In addition to, we do street teaming all over the city. Department of Cultural Affairs also sends out a mass email on our behalf. We use Councilman Herb Wesson, most recent Council President Herb Wesson. His office does a lot of promoting of what's happening at the theater because we reside in his district. So it happens in that way. Our reviews are in the Los Angeles Times and all of the electronic and print media. So many ways. But word of mouth, again, in the tradition of black and brown communities, word of mouth is really, really, the beating of the drum, so to speak, is really another major way in which we get the word out.
Now, one of your works won an Ovation Award. Tell us about that and how you felt. You must have been very, very proud, both of you.
Well, I have to tell you, firstly, I must say, I call Senator Holden, I call him Councilman Emeritus. He's been such a joy in my life and such a supporter of mine. And so anything that we do, I wanted to represent his name well, because he represented his district and his constituency so beautifully throughout his 16 years in city council particularly. So I always want to do high standard work where we walk into a theater chamber that bears his name. But we have won, fortunately, if I may add, several Ovation Awards, which is the highest award in Los Angeles theater. Our first production, Two Trains Running, by the late, great August Wilson, we won for Raisin in the Sun. I brought Felicia Rashad in to make her directorial debut in Los Angeles. She directed our Raisin in the Sun. We won with that. We won with Our Five Guys Named Mo, and we also won with The Gospel at Colonus. And so we're very, very, very proud of that distinction and where we sit in the firmament of Los Angeles theater.
Senator, how did you feel? What was your reaction to these wonderful awards coming your way?
Well, I was psychologically conditioned early on to provide this facility, and when I had an opportunity to do so, that's what I did. For the purpose for which it's being used, what Wren explained so well, the purpose for which he brought his theater to the Native Performing Arts Center. Let me just tell you that when I was a kid, we had one day a week we could go to the movies, African Americans. And if you did, you have to sit downstairs. And when I would see those movies, and obviously we were not represented, but at the time the African American performers were making movies, black movies, cowboy movies, okay? And when I said now we have an opportunity to upgrade that. And now I'm a city council member. And this is my challenge. This is my time to make it happen. And so when you're given the opportunity, I talked to my friends. I made a lot of friends in Washington and able to get the funding to create the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. And that's so it is today.
Well, we talked about some of the programs and the different performances that you've had for the African American community, but you've also been inclusive. There have been flamenco performances. Why was that important in a multicultural city like Los Angeles? Begin with Wren.
Well, it's vitally important because the tradition of the flamenco, particularly this company, Rafael Amargo and his company, they're just exquisite artists. And we want, again, irrespective of what discipline we put on that stage, we want it to represent the highest standard of the art. And so that company does that. We've had chamber orchestras there. You know, we've had reciprocity with the Korean community here, presenting wonderful music on that stage. And so, you know, it's really, really about that kind of diversity, really. Though we're culturally specific from an African-American perspective, we honor the African diaspora and we honor high standards wherever we find them.
Absolutely. Now, after hearing this, I'm sure a lot of our viewers would want to support the work that you're doing. And I understand that you have a campaign called Name a Seat. Would either of you like to address that?
I named 2 seats.
He was the first person to name seats at the theater.
That was a wonderful idea. Tell us how you got that idea to do this.
I paid $2,000. I wanted to support the theater financially, so when the opportunities were made available, I just said, I'll be the first. Here's my $2,000.
Wonderful.
I'm sure there are other prices at different locations.
Yes, but I mean, the first 2 seats were named by Councilman Holden. And so that was wonderful. And we had a major event. It was associated with the Garth Fagan Dance Company when they were here last. And when the councilman stepped right up, there were others who stepped up as well. And we're very, very proud of the seat naming project because it undergirds, you know, so much of what we do there at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center.
So if someone wants to go ahead and name a seat, what do they do?
They go right onto our website or they call our managing director, the great and august Gail Hooks, right there at our theater. You can go to the website, www.ebonyrep.org, and the seat naming capacity is right there, which is tied also to the Marilyn Project, named in honor of Marilyn Hudson.
Okay, tell us about Marilyn Hudson.
Marilyn Hudson was one of the great, Councilman Holden, you can speak about Marilyn Hudson and Obert Hudson for a moment if you would.
Yeah, Ms. Hudson was very active in the community. So was her husband, and so was her father-in-law, Dr. H. Claude Hudson. Okay, they owned the banks. And she was active in supporting the Performing Arts Center.
Absolutely.
Okay, and she lived in my district. Okay, and I got to tell you that she was a great leader. When she took a position on the issue, the other would follow because they trusted her. And she's no longer with us, but she made a mark where she would never be forgotten. May not be in soul and body, but in spirit. And her history is well documented.
And I understand that particular project is geared to helping young people come and see performances. Tell us more about that.
That's exactly right. She wanted to leave an endowment that allowed the least of these in our community to see this work. She wanted them to be able to come in there and to leave with a sense of pride, to leave with a sense of being exposed beyond the traditional exposure of a young life where there's oftentimes no exposure. And that touches also young people of any stripe are able to come and be a beneficiary of what Marilyn Hudson put together and what she endowed there at our theater.
Do you have groups of school children coming in from time to time?
Oh, without question.
Tell us about that.
Well, we use all of from Alta Loma Elementary School, which are right in our district, to Mount Vernon Junior High School, which is now called Johnny Cochran Middle School, Los Angeles High School, Susan Miller Dorsey High School. They all come. Alexander Hamilton High School, Audubon Junior High, Virginia Road Elementary. They all come to the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. And so the price point ranges. We don't usually have tickets ever that top $50, but we give away scores of tickets to every run of every show so that the youth can come and participate in the work that we're doing.
And how do you feel about that, having the kids come and participate?
I love it. That's the idea. In fact, I drop by the theater from time to time, and they have dancing groups there, just practicing, rehearsing, and so on for the performances that they're going to put on at some other location, perhaps. But the kids are our future, and many of them are dedicated to the arts. They just don't have a chance to display their talent. And so it's important to me to know that this facility is a location where they have an opportunity to do that, to get their training, improve their skills, and go on to perform, be great in years to come.
Tell us a little more about the workshops. You put on some workshops?
Pat Taylor particularly, she is the founder of the Jazz Antiqua Dance Company. They're there twice a week. Several dance companies are there. We have the Amazing Grace Conservatory under Wendy Raquel Robinson's leadership. They are there 3 times a year. So they have that wonderful conservatory where in 3 different times of the year they're training up to 70 young people. And we have a relationship where they do their presentations on the stage at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center.
You see,
Yes.
the schools don't provide these opportunities to the extent that they should. And that means that having this facility available, they can sharpen their skills there. Even though the school is saying no, we don't, no, there's no budget for it. And Mr. Wren Brown is making sure that it's available, the doors are open, they can come there and train.
Let's end with a couple of thoughts here. What is it that you would like the audience, our viewers, to know about the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center?
I would love our viewers to know that the doors are open for them to come, and they can absolutely rest assured that they will see high standards. They will see themselves reflected. They will see work done with integrity and dignity, and they will see that work disproportionately produced by a native son. I'm a 4th generation Angelino. My great-grandmother was born here in 1890 at 24th and Maple. Her parents were married here in 1882. So when we had restrictive covenants in this city, where the east side, we are all from the east side, everything was east of Main Street, and the north boundary was called North Temple at Beverly Boulevard, and then we went down to Watts. But the reality of it is, for us to be situated at 4718 West Washington Boulevard is really, really a miracle. When you talked about restrictive covenants were not struck down until 1948 under Harry S. Truman. So we bring history that's sensitive to the entire populace of this city, and we practice intentional civility in the work that we do.
Senator, what do you want the public to know about your Performing Arts Center?
I want them to come there and see it. And I just had a birthday party there where we had full to capacity, waiting line outside. All of them couldn't get in, 402 people. And so there are some people who had not been there before. And having come this time, and they're going to bring their friends and spread the word, I want them to know that it's there for them, that I committed it from my heart based on my life experiences previously. And I thought that whereas I didn't have the opportunities, those in my generation didn't have the opportunity to show their skills, I thought this would be an ideal place for that to happen. And so they should take advantage of the opportunity that Mr. Wren Brown is providing for them. Talk to Gail, Wren, and come and see this facility and put on performances there and bring their friends and children and community. As he said, that when they have plays, some performances, and they run out of money, they can't attend, he let them come in anyway in some cases.
That's right.
One last question. Where do we find more information?
www.ebonyrep.org, 323-964-9768.
You're doing a wonderful job for the City of Los Angeles, bringing the performing arts here. Senator Nate Holden, Wren T. Brown, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of LA Currents. I'm Saida Pagan.